Okay, we'll get started. Thank you so much, everyone. I think because we do have a pretty good large size group, that we'll skip going around the room for introductions, but please do throw your name and stuff in the chat. Feel free to participate in the chat. We want this to be active discussion. We're really kicking off our workshop series and hoping to provide more information around potential digital equity and digital inclusion funding, and then also build our ecosystem from within. So this is very beginning stages of what is hopefully ongoing work for a really long time, that we can continue to work together and provide opportunities to foster partnerships and collaboration and those kinds of fun things. So without further ado, we're obviously kicking it off with the Office of Statewide Broadband with Ronnie and Vishnu. And I'll let you guys do your own introductions. Thank you very much for being here today and putting this together.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, perfect. For those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, and hello to some of the familiar faces I see. My name is Ronnie Hammond. I'm the director for the Maryland Office of Statewide Broadband. And Vishnu, if you wanted to introduce yourself as well. Hi, my name is Vishnu. I'm with the Office of Statewide Broadband as the Digital Equity Program Manager. Just a little bit about our office. For those who don't know, our office oversees all of the broadband projects, whether that's infrastructure or digital equity going on within the state. As you may be familiar, our state receives federal funding, and we want to be good stewards of those taxpayer dollars. And we're trying to meet the needs of every citizen in Maryland with broadband access and deployment. And so we have our infrastructure team and we have our digital equity team. And so with the federal funding that we've received in the past and the funding that we're expecting to receive in the future, we want to make sure that we're dispersing that across the state to the most impacted and needed communities. And we're doing that through two means. That's infrastructure, or the physical construction and deployment of broadband networks, and then digital equity, which is the access piece of that to get homes and families connected to that internet. And so, Bishop, if you could go to the next slide. Just a brief overview of our mission here. Our OSB is responsible for ensuring that every Marylander has equal access and the necessary skills to leverage digital resources, technologies, and opportunities, regardless of their background, location, or abilities. To help this goal, we partner with our local jurisdictions, our private sectors, community anchor institutions, to reduce and eventually, hopefully, eliminate the number of communities and residents underserved by what we call the current digital divide. And so if you've been following our office or the federal government, you know that there is the Infrastructure Investment Job Act. And that is the most recent act where there's broadband funding through BEAD and through digital equity. And specifically for us, it's the digital equity capacity grants. So we were implemented and directed from NTIA to develop a state digital equity plan. And so that plan was developed and published on our website. And we plan to update that digital equity plan twice a year as we develop and implement new programs that are implementing on that state digital equity plan. And so that plan is going to be updating twice a year. But I say that to say that, Vishnu, if we go to the next slide, I say that to say that with the DE capacity grants, that sparks the next initiative with the programs that our office will be providing and the funding that our office will be providing. While we'll spend briefly discussing what some of those programs are or will be or what we anticipate them to be, the rest of it will really follow the structure of what does the grant management side of that look like? What should organizations be aware of? What kind of metrics should they be gathering, not just once an award is made, but maybe even prior to that to help with some of the applications that should be submitted. And with our implementation of our state digital equity plan, we really look at implementing 4 key specific projects, or what I would say programs. And Vishnu will go into each one of these, but there's going to be the digital equity planning and coalition building, our community technology resources, digital skill building programs, and our Connecting Underserved Communities programs. And so you'll see that some of these programs follow suits of what we've implemented in the past. When we received some ARPA funding. And so a lot of our programs follow that same suit. And we saw some successes with those early establishment, those early programs that we had around digital equity. And so we really aim to utilize these 4 key specific programs to really implement on our digital equity plan. We received about $13.4 million from the state. Did I break up? I just got a little notification that my internet was unstable, even though I'm hardwired in here. So
You're fine.
Can you guys hear me fine? Still?
You're fine.
Okay, perfect. And so the $13.4 million from the feds for the digital equity capacity grant, about 11.8 million of that will be directly towards specific programs and projects. The remaining of that is going to be on the admin funding for things like plan updates, research, and personnel salaries, vendor, contractor services. And so, Vishnu, did you want to go into each one of these programs just to give a brief description of what each one of these programs entail? I do want to mention, though, that these are not final. We are continuously building upon these, but hope to have finalized programs within the next few weeks to solicit out to the public. So these could change. There's a possibility that they may change. But again, with NTIA's approval, this is what we expect to do and implement through a NOVA period.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ronnie, for sharing all that information. All right, so like Ronnie mentioned, we are constantly tweaking them. And so you're going to get a lot of resources and everything towards the end of how you can give your feedback after the presentation as to if you notice any changes or if you notice any suggestions you have, or you have any other idea that we can expand digital capacity funds on. We definitely want to hear from you. And so all of those resources will be shared towards the end. So without further delay, I'm going to go briefly into what each one is. The first one is digital equity planning and coalition building. This is specifically to fund organizations or jurisdictions that would be interested in creating a digital inclusion plan. So ideally, it would be great if we can see a digital inclusion plan for all different counties. But we also understand that in certain rural areas of Maryland, if there are counties that want to do the work together and want to form a coalition, then they can still apply for these funds and be able to create a coalition. We do ask that the coalition consist of at least 5 other organizations who are doing digital inclusion work, and that they do receive a letter of appointment from their jurisdiction or county official stating that. So it can be a nonprofit organization who are looking to lead a coalition, or it can be a government institution who is looking to lead it as well. And same thing goes for the planning as well. Usually county organizations will be looking at creating digital inclusion plans for their jurisdiction. The second is community technology resource centers. This is very similar to the program that we actually do already have open. So once again, feel free to look at our website. A lot of the programs will resemble. You can get a general idea on how the programs are structured from our office. The Community Technology Resource Center is basically the funds are primarily focused towards creating public access space for any kind of device needs that community members might have. So to say in a short story, it's bringing our good old computer lab days back, where people can go in and do their homeworks, search for jobs, apply for government benefits, and also be able to do some telehealth appointments if they are looking for a space to do that. So if there are jurisdictions looking to sort of create that, this is, again, we understand the need from our office for the lack of devices. Although our program already had a program, the office already had a Chromebook distribution program, and we're not looking at doing any other new device distribution program. But we are hoping that with the help of this Community Technology Resource Center, that there is still that public access to devices available for organizations and for people. Also, this will also help people, if they don't have internet, that they can go to these computer labs where there is stable internet available. The third program is Digital Skill Building Program. Don't want to really throw you off with the name. This is basically digital education program, digital navigation program. And so we wanted to make it an encompassing of any kind of digital skill or education that was needed, whether it is a group class, one-on-one class, tech support, or basic learning of technology for their daily needs. That's what would encompass in this digital skill building program. And the last is Connecting the Underserved Communities program. Again, this is similar to the program that we had recently launched on the Computer Lab program. If you do get a chance to familiarize yourself with the Digital Equity Plan, you'll notice that we have some key gap in services for this covered population. Not that the other population is not important or that they should not be served, but the office recognizes that this population needs some very specific, they have very specific needs with the technology, which may not be easily available or readily available in the mainstream. And so through these grant programs, we're hoping that organizations will feel more encouraged to create a more inclusive environment for this population to be served. And so that is the incarcerated population, the disabled population, our veterans, and our unhoused or the homeless populations. So the last program is more of like an encompassing program. So it is not targeting specifically just a computer lab, but it could be digital skills, digital navigation, or there might be any other device technology that this particular group might be needing. And so we want those organizations to be able to participate, take advantage of this program, and help us fill that gap in services for this covered population. Now I'm going to get into some specifics of exactly what does the Office of Statewide Broadband grants look like. So like any other grant applications, those of you who might have had chance to do it, and if this is your first time, then I want to let you know that there's some key components to a grant. First is there will be an application guide. This guide will give you information on what are the eligible uses, ineligible uses, what do you have to do to apply for a grant, what type of project narrative is needed. It needs a budget, it needs a scope of work, timeline, implementation plan, and so on and so forth. And so I've not listed everything that is in a program guide. Again, please keep in mind the programs that I shared earlier, we don't have the program guides publicly available yet, as we are still in formation of those programs. But if you wanted to refer to our website to look at what some sample program guides look like, I would highly encourage you to do so. And you'll see that it follows a similar structure. But for each program, the eligible and ineligible uses will change. So before you apply or you create your project narrative, it is very important that you pay close attention to what are the eligible and ineligible uses of this grant. The second key component of a grant application is the application. Again, Office of Statewide Broadband, to really make this very easy and accessible for organizations to apply, we literally have a simple 4-page application. It's not very lengthy. It's collecting some very basic contact, budget, kind of information on it. And I really, really suggest that please familiarize yourself with the form. And that is something that would be required in a grant application. Sometimes people think that, oh, they looked at program guide and they filled the project narrative and now I don't need to fill in the form. The application form is necessary. It is required. The program guide and the project narrative budget, and that is also required, but that is supplementary with the application. So you have to attach it with the application. One does not substitute for the other. I want to be very, very clear about that to everyone here. The third thing that we require are some supporting documents. Again, when you refer to that program guide, it is going to tell you what are the supporting documents needed. Very key thing that I want to make sure I draw your attention to, when you see any fields or even in the program guide, things that are listed, that means they're required. Only if in the bracket it says if applicable, that you can think of it as an optional if it applies to your organization. But if it says nothing next to it, then by default, it means it is required. For example, W-9. We don't put anything next to W-9 because it is required. 501c3 or a letter of support. That is something that might be if applicable. So if you're a not-profit organization or you're a government institution, obviously 501c would not apply to you. However, the W-9 does apply. So that applies to every single individual. So please pay attention to program guide for more details on the supporting documents needed for each application. Again, each application is going to have different supporting documents needed. So please please pay close attention to that as well. The last is we're going to put a checklist in these program guides because we did notice that some applicants in the past have left out certain components in an application. And so just to kind of help you further assist where you don't miss out on anything, we're going to create a small checklist. Make sure you take a look at that. Make sure your application is signed. I cannot say how many times we'd receive an application, but it does not have a signature, or it is not actually a signing authority who is signing it. So please, please make sure. They may seem small details, but they matter tremendously. I want to go in a little bit of detail of what does a project narrative really look like, or what is a good project narrative. This is, again, general guidance. By all means, I'm not trying to tell you how to write your grant, but when you are planning for a project and you want to think about how am I going to submit, if this is your first time that you're doing, I want you to think of a project narrative as like your whole grant proposal. And that proposal would entail some of these key components. More information is always good, doesn't hurt. Less would just kind of delay the process in a way. Sometimes we might have to come back and ask you. So I would always recommend putting more information about the project. As much as you know, the better it is. So these are some key components. A good executive summary is a must. I would also say your project proposal should be as detailed. So give a detailed description of your project. Sometimes I see people put proposal, which is just like 3 paragraphs. Like 3 lines. And I don't really exactly know what are you doing. You want to write your project proposal with the mindset that if this is a person that I've never met before, how am I best describing my project? So please include details. Do not assume that we already know about your organization. We are doing this presentation because we want to encourage organizations who have never applied before. We want to encourage institutions that have not done digital equity work, or maybe they do the work, but they don't know that it is digital equity work. And so if you are an applicant who is doing this the first time, I want you to know that please write your project proposal, which is described in detail, as if we have never met before. Yeah. Also, please identify what barriers you would be facing in implementing a project. You can also refer to our digital equity plan and align some of your barriers with the plan and its goals and objectives. You can use that as a reference. Also, you want to think about how you're going to measure the outcomes and metrics, or which are the intended outcomes and metrics that you plan for your project to measure the success of it. The third component is actual measurement and evaluation of the impact that it does in the community if this project was funded. So obviously this is a proposal, so you want to think of it in terms of what impact it would create if it was funded, right? And feel free to use numbers. They may be estimates, we completely understand, but we'd rather see some estimates and a rough idea of the size of your community and the impact you're trying to create from this project. Next is statement of experience. Again, these are some of the suggestions. It doesn't mean that you have to have experience in digital equity. Like I said, you may be doing the work, but you just didn't know that it's called digital equity. And so please just describe a little bit of experience that your organization have with maybe grants, maybe reporting, or maybe community engagement. That brings me to the next piece. We definitely welcome partnerships. So working in groups with other organizations, community partnership is key to digital equity work. Again, by all means, it's not that you have to have a partnership or it disqualifies your grant by any means. But if you do have a partner, we would like to hear and know about it. So please include that in your project narrative. Implementation plan. How do you really plan to implement the project once you receive the funding? This is a little bit different than the timeline. And so that's why I've kind of subcategorized the timeline underneath, as we would like to see both. I want to see how you're going to implement the project, at the same time, give a rough idea of timeline. Again, it's okay if it is tentative. And the last is funding scope and budget. Try your best to give closest estimates. And if it is something related to, say, for example, the community technology resource where you are actually buying certain things, and if you have technical specifications for the things you look at that you're considering to buy from this project, please include those technical specifications as well. I don't see any questions in the chat yet, so I'm just going to continue. While the presentation, if you do have any questions, feel free to add those in the chat. So these are just some key things to keep in mind. Provide the most accurate contact of a person for this grant. Sometimes I know there's an organization that will hire someone to do the grant writing, and then we're not able to reach that person, and they did not put any person of the organization as a contact. And so it's okay if you have like 2 main people as a contact, and please specify if they're for grant or if they're for program. I cannot emphasize the importance of having a right point of contact. That does oftentimes contribute to delays in communications. Again, this is just, helping you reiterate that all the fields in the application form are required. Just because it didn't say anything, it doesn't mean it's optional. You have to fill every single field in the application. Only if it says, if applicable, that is when you decide if it applies to your organization or not. Sometimes I have organizations, they'll submit the budget and scope, but they'll not put it in the application itself. We do want to see it in the application, as that is sort of like a summary. So please pay attention to the application form. Next is the application name. Must match the name that you have on your W-9. I cannot say how many times the name is a mismatch, and that also causes further delays with our MOU executions in our agreements. So I know that you might think that that is a step later, but your application is setting you up for that process. And so it'll help us mitigate a lot of time doing back and forth. And, if we have the right name of the organization, Again, please keep that in mind. It's the right name of the applicant organization that should match the W-9. Thank you. Another key component on our application, we ask for EIN number, UEI number, DUNS number. And somehow I think sometimes organizations think that, oh, if I have one, I don't need the other. Like I said, they are all required. If your organization is a nonprofit that does not have any of these numbers, I would say you can start that process even before the grant. Because I know the UEI number is something you get it from the federal government. And so it does take time for them to process and get that number. And you do need that when you apply. So start preparing for that. Again, pay attention to the checklist that is in the application. I see a question in the chat from Jane. If you're submitting with partners, do you want to experience of all or only the lead? I need to see the experience of the lead applicant. And then that's where the letter of support is. If you're partnering with certain organizations, you can provide a letter of support of that organization. Now, if you're implementing a project in partnership and you have some key components of your project that a partner is doing, sure, you can talk about them in the statement of experience as well. And definitely indicate how that organization is contributing to the project. Ronnie, feel free to add if, you know.
No, that's, yeah, I don't have anything to add right now. I do want to say, I will go back to the other slide. It is understood that most recently that the UEI number replaces the DUNS number, but if you have both, please list both. If not, we need the UEI instead of the DUNS. If you don't have both of them, we definitely need the UEI.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That was very important information. Those of you who are hearing this for the first time, maybe during the webinar or even after, if you don't know where to get UEI number, please look up sam.gov website. And I believe that's where the whole direction of how you can register and get the UEI number set up is provided. Again, this is something you would do independently. It's not done through our office. You would be registering on sam.gov federal website. This is something which is most awaited. Again, please pay attention. This is a tentative timeline. Please do not think this is a confirmed timeline. With changes that happens in current environment, we are definitely aware. We try to keep ourselves most aware, let me put it that way. And so these timelines are subject to change. But as of now, if we're thinking of proceeding with business as usual, this is what it looks like. Currently, we have digital equity capacity interest form that is open. This is your opportunity to submit your suggestions, thoughts, ideas, what you think of participating in the digital equity capacity funds as. That is open till March 31st. We are going to be actively looking through them and then using that to sort of readjust our program capacity guides based on the needs of the community. So your feedback will be greatly appreciated and needed through this capacity interest form. Again, the resources will be shared in this slide where you can find those. It's all readily available right on the front page of Office of Statewide Broadband. The next timeline to keep in mind is we'll be finalizing our program guides through the month of April. And then around May time is when we plan to release that NOFO. NOFO is the first release of an announcement when these grant programs are available for applicants to apply. We do intend to keep applications open for 60 days, just to give organizations a bit more time to figure out their partnerships or be able to get some feedback and complete their application and necessary paperwork. So May 1st would be the earliest I would expect. Again, it might be sometime in that time frame or that week. And then we'll be reviewing the application, and you should hear back from us if there are any edits, any curation needed on your application, if you're missing something. After the deadline of the NOFO, which is after June, you should be hearing from our office. But the active curation period is August 18th through August 31st. That is where I want to make sure that all the curation requirements have been received from the applicants. And after that is the wonderful time to celebrate and announce the awardees, and then follow through the rest of the procedures, basically, which will follow through in implementing the capacity program. So we're coming to the second part of our presentation, which is, okay, you applied, you created a partnership, you wrote a good project narrative, you followed the timeline, you submitted your application. There is a very key component that really boils down to how do you really measure success? And I think success measurement doesn't happen when you implement a program, but it really happens how you set it up. And so being aware of that, we want to share with you what are the different kind of metrics that you would want to think when you are creating your program, because this is something that we're going to be asking after you are awarded the grant. So if you're not awarded, you don't have to worry about this. But if you are awarded, I think these are some key indicators, which are some good practices that you want to think about when you are writing your project proposal with different metrics and data to measure the success of your program. So this is not just for our reporting, but also for you to kind of align your program with the digital equity plan. And yes, you will be reporting those to us. So the first is be prepared to collect the data when planning a project. Obviously, you don't collect data when you have just submitted application. You do it after the MOU has been executed. So after you're awarded, all the legal documents have been signed, and then when you actually start implementing is when you start actually collecting the data. But you definitely want to prepare for it. Reports typically in our office are due on a quarterly basis. This is something that is new that we're introducing. Again, keep in mind these funds that we are requesting are federal funds, and so we want to follow some of their reporting guidelines as well. And so having a quarterly report is something that our agency requires. At the same time, we'll need it on the federal level as well. These are some key metrics that our office needs to collect. Total number of people you served. Again, it is not through the whole project. It'll be through that quarter. So when you're doing a quarterly report, you're looking at that quarter of how many people you served during that quarter. Number of covered population. So you do want to measure the category of covered population you're serving. The demographic information of the population you served. Again, this is for the purpose of understanding the disparities in our communities from the past that has happened. And so we want to just make sure that the programs align in just undoing some of the wrongs from the past. This is an initiative that is agency-wide and statewide. And so we want to definitely align our project with some of those goals and objectives. Accomplishments and some of the community insights. We love hearing testimonies, whether they're written testimonies, videos. So, think of collecting and documenting those. And obviously some obstacles learned. So how we can maybe improvise the program or maybe future opportunities. This is some more guidance on the covered population. I know I referred that in my previous slide. So this is a breakdown of what that covered population really looks like. Again, this is 8 categories of covered population, which has been identified by NTIA. And so the federal guidelines applies. If you have a question about, what is a veteran? It is per federal guidelines or per COMA regulations in the state of Maryland. So feel free to refer those for the specific definitions. But these are the 8 categories of the covered population that we're looking to serve. Again, by all means, it doesn't mean that you only serve this 8 covered population. We want to serve every Marylander in the state. However, we want to make a targeted outreach to people who need it the most. So it does not, by all means, eliminate anyone in receiving services. Last, these are some metric measurements as per the federal guidelines. Not saying that you just choose one over the other. These are all different metrics that we'll be looking into. So as you're doing your program, you want to also know what kind of outcome and impact it's going to create in the society. So if there is a computer lab, well, when a person walked in, did they use it for economic workforce, education, health, civic social engagement, delivery of essential services? People sometimes are not very clear of the distinction between civic and social engagement. So I just used few examples. They can be more. By all means, these are not restricted to the categories. But civic and social engagement is more like, you know, were they there for using social media to do news updates? Maybe they're doing some religious engagement using the computer lab space, you know, doing some research for their spiritual health or for their emotional health or for their family needs. So those kind of uses would categorize as civic and social engagement. And then we have delivery of essential services. So if a person is using the technology or the classes, which is helping them with government services, learning how to pay bills, about banking, these are some essential needs. You know, maybe they're accessing food pantries. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to get grocery coupons, food stamps, you know, SNAP. Again, these are all government programs. So those kind of essential delivery of services, we would also like to know how your community is impacted with. I just want to use a small example here. If you're thinking that, oh my God, like, how are we going to really measure these? I would say, I'm going to use an example here for a computer lab program. Generally, you want to have a sign-in sheet, you know, where you're having person come in and sign in that, oh, they're here to use a computer lab. And they're on your sign-in sheet. If you just had these as a category, what is your intended use? Now, we understand that when they're using technology, they might be using it for multiple purposes. As long as the person is self-identifying what is their primary area of use while they're visiting, they would take themselves, and that's pretty much how you would collect the data. And so when you're submitting to us, we don't need the sign-in sheets, but we would like to definitely get an average of, you know, what area of use the population that came in used for the technology center. Again, this is one example just to kind of help organization get started and think about this. Creativity is beyond the realms of 4 screens here. So absolutely, I encourage organizations to get creative, how they plan on really, you know, measuring the impact of digital inclusion efforts. And we're almost to the end. This is just, again, this is, oh, I'm missing a D. I just noticed that. I will be fixing the D. But this is a link to our Broadband page, our homepage, where you can find the capacity interest form. There is, if you don't know your local broadband point of contact, you can use that sheet. Again, this is with the purpose of organizations who are maybe looking at the planning grant, they're looking at that coalition building, and they don't know who to reach out to in their areas who are connected with broadband services. So they can use the broadband point of contact for that. We have grant programs as a specific page, which outlines digital equity and infrastructure programs. These are all the past programs that have been there. So feel free to look through those and acclimate yourself, again, with those program guides and application forms. We are working on our dashboard and map. There is already a Broadband Hub map. Feel free to look through that. We do have publicly accessible our digital equity plan and the broadband plan on the website. There is a section that says latest news. You do have to click on the latest news, and that's where it gives you the list of all the NOFOs when they are released. And you can sign up on the website to receive future communication for those NOFOs as well. And then last is contact us information. I'm also putting it here in the slide. Again, my name is Vishnupriya. You can just call me Vishnu. I am the Digital Equity Program Manager. This is my contact. You can email to our osb.de@maryland.gov. It is monitored during office hours all the time. There's also my direct email address, and there's also Ronnie, our project director, so our office director. So feel free to reach him as well if you have any questions. And with that, I am open to some question and answers. Oh, I definitely want to say thank you to all my audience who paid attention through this presentation. Absolutely, I appreciate you taking the time out of a busy week. I know it was sort of a short notice, but we wanted to get this information out to you sooner than later, so you can actually take advantage of this and really, really start planning. Please do not wait till the last date of the NOFO application. Use this time, use these webinars to really build those partnerships and create connections in the community. I also want to thank MDEC, which is Maryland Digital Equity Coalition, for putting this series together and inviting us to present today. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishnu. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
One thing, we do have a survey for our webinar series that Julie just posted in the chat, so please take a second to provide us with your feedback on that. I just have a question about projects. If you have multiple projects in multiple categories, or your project is maybe 2 or 3 projects in one, would you prefer one big application, multiple applications? Are there limits to how many different applications we can apply for, etc.?
So, how we've advised,
Not just me either, like the royal we.
yeah.
Sure.
So how we've advised in the past is it's always best to submit more applications. So let's say you've got 5 different projects. Instead of submitting one application with those 5 projects, how about submitting those 5 projects entirely? And the reason for that being because if your application gets rejected, it gets rejected for all 5 projects rather than 1 or 2 of those 5 submitted projects. It's just a likelier chance that there's awards made for those projects. And we do have the 4 specific programs that you saw. Each of those will require its own application. You can't have one application for multiple of those programs. So those each will require their own applications. But within those programs, if you have multiple projects that you anticipate on assisting with, then I would suggest submitting multiple applications for that as well.
Yeah.
Does that help answer anyone's? Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely helps with our organization purposes, because again, just like Ronnie said, each program is a separate program. And so having applications in each of them separately, again, remember to put the supporting documents and everything in each of those applications as a package. Yeah. I do see some questions in the chat that I want to quickly take, just so that they don't get left out. 1 second, Mitzi, is that okay if I come back to you? Thank you. I see a question from Betsy. She's asking, what is the time period of the awarded grant? 1 year or multiple? Thank you, Betsy. I definitely missed that on my presentation. I was wondering, like, what did I miss out? This program, Digital Equity State Capacity, is a 4-year program. So as of now, I believe, and Ronnie, please help me correct, I believe it is till 2030.
Yeah, it's technically a
Yeah.
5-year program, but for the programs, once programs actually hit the ground, it'll be a 4-year program in which those programs will be running and funding those programs. And then there's, of course, the administrative time outside of that associated with conducting the necessary reporting and closeout periods for those programs.
I will also mention a very important element, which is these applications, which will open in May, will be for that entire period of 4 years. So if you're thinking that I'll apply in the second round, we're not going to have a second round of applications open up. Yes, Mitzi.
So I know you can't, to some extent, each application you're going to judge based on the merits. But do you have a sense of, if we're looking at doing applications where we're collaborating together with partners to put together bigger applications versus creating smaller applications individually, do you have a preference? Similarly, if we're looking to put together applications that are larger, where we do cross-county applications versus individual county applications, do you have a preference? And saying within each bucket.
I'm sorry, Mitzi, I missed the beginning of that question. Could you repeat it real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so assuming that you stay within each of the 4 categories, not cross categories, do you have any preference of, if we're looking to collaborate with multiple organizations to create a larger application versus submitting them individually, or if we're looking to create larger ones because we're doing them cross-county versus submitting them individually? Do you have any preference?
We don't have a preference. Again, I think it's what you think may be best for your submission. Again, you could separate them into separate projects. Which means multiple applications, or you could submit them as one lump sum in one application. It's just a matter of, once they're scored, and if it falls with, lower on the scale of a score and that entire application gets rejected, then you miss out on the opportunity to have an impact in those multiple communities. Again, so I would advise just multiple applications. I mean, even though I understand that the project program is going to be the same, so it may be the same narrative, but the demographics, because of each county, the demographics will be a little different, but that information is going to change. Again, I would just advise to submit multiple applications, just to be on the safe side. But we don't have a preference. No, we leave that autonomy up to the applicant.
Okay, and are you providing any preference for places where they haven't been doing digital equity work before?
We don't have any preference, and once we finalize the programs, we'll have scoring rubric, and we will denote on that application guide what the scoring criteria will be. I cannot say that for the question that you asked, cannot say that that's applicable to all the programs, but there's going to be something along the likes of that, yes. Or there could be something along the likes of that. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's a preference of ours, but could it be a scoring criteria? Yes.
I think Davies.
I wanted to add one comment to everything that Ronnie said, which is when you are maybe partnering across other counties or maybe with multiple organizations. Remember, when it comes to reporting and invoice submissions and things like that, it would be the one point of contact that we had from the application who would be responsible for those reporting and reimbursement requirements. Our agency will not be going, like if you have 10 partners, we're not going to all 10 to collect the data. It would be the primary organization that has applied and the main point of contact. And so from that perspective, you might also want to be, again, I'm saying this for organizations who might have never done this before. If they're doing it the first time, you also want to think with your partners' roles and responsibilities when you're doing a partnership application, yeah.
Are you
then-
requiring formal MOUs for partners?
No.
We're not requiring formal MOUs, but at least a letter of participation. And so that letter of commitment, I think is going to be important. Letter of partnership. I'm sorry, I said participation, but letter of partnership, for sure.
Yeah, I see one question and then I'm coming right back to you, Mitzi. There's a question in the chat from Betsy. Is there a funding range? There will be funding range. We have not finalized that yet. That is something that you want to look for when the NOFO is released, when those final program guides are released. That's where I'm also suggesting organizations, if you have suggestions, if you have thoughts, please use that capacity interest form. And, this is the time when we want to hear from you. And you can definitely, share your suggestions through that. Yeah, go ahead, Mitzi.
The first, I forgot the second question. First question was, if there is, for two questions are, is there going to be any attempt so that based on how the population of Maryland, there's more people that live in this in certain counties than live in other counties. Is any attempts going to be made that either in one hand that there's more funding that runs into where the more populated areas are, or in reverse, there's an attempt made to make sure that there's funding that goes into every county, regardless of population?
No, we're not setting any limits by population county. No.
Okay, and then there's a question in the chat: is there a match?
No, we don't require matches for any of our digital equity programs.
Okay, and then is there a cap on administrative expenses or any kind of ability to, like, the work that you're doing to administer the grant? Are you able to make that part of the grant application?
Yes, there will be administrative caps, and they'll be built into the application guide.
Okay, and then will there be any kind of indirect cost permitted?
We haven't finalized that, but following suit of the majority of our prior funding, typically no, outside of a few of the programs that we have, but that's something that we are in discussion with our federal program officer, and so we're just looking to see what that may look like and how to build that into our applications, as it does indirect cost does take away from the allotted funding that we have. So
Thank you.
I just want to elaborate on the point about match. So although our applications do not require match, if that is something your organization has a capacity and wants to do, please indicate that on your project proposal. It's something to put on your project proposal for sure.
it is also a part of the scoring criteria that more points if you are putting up additional funding or seeking or have sourced funding from other sources as well.
Would
for a
that
total.
include in-kind match? Like staff positions or any in-kind stuff for match or just cash?
I'm sorry.
Is it
Oh,
just cash?
no, nope,
No.
nope, in kind is fine, yep.
Again, these are not required scoring criterias, but they are sort of just something that we make a note of.
There's a question about the impact of executive orders in federal administration. Do you guys have any advice on how to proceed in this climate?
Nope, we're proceeding with business as normal. We haven't been impacted directly. So until an executive order is issued regarding the federal digital equity capacity grant, we're proceeding with business as normal.
Looks like we have 2 minutes remaining and we finished all the questions in time.
Are there areas, I know, you know, that you're concerned you're not going to get applications for, or you know, any kind of significant pain points or gaps you're hoping you see come through? You know, beyond the things we are obviously doing, but like, you know, just like what keeps you up at night, like in terms of what kinds of applications you're gonna get.
Yeah, I guess I can answer that, Vishnu, then maybe you can answer. I don't get kept up at night with the application that we receive. Because you know, from what we've seen our communities have been very responsive to our DE applications and program funding opportunities. You know, we've kind of identified those 4 gaps where we just aren't seeing a significant a significant amount of services being provided to those communities, and so you know that's why we created that specific covered population program really to cater to those specific covered populations where we are seeing gaps. And I think as a concern, that's just one of the key areas is the DE services being provided to those specifically to those communities, and that's where I think we may there may be a little worry is the organizations or the services being provided to those key individuals.
I'll add in my dream. I don't want to necessarily say that it keeps me up, but definitely something that I dream about, which is I love Maryland State, and I feel that Maryland is a very dynamic state when it comes to digital equity or even adopting different initiatives. And so I would love to see that every county has a digital equity plan, or at least there are coalitions which are serving every jurisdiction in some form or shape, you know. And I think those who live in Maryland, I think they know where the gaps are. I don't want to, name one over the other. And so I think it would be a dream to see some more leadership being taken in those areas where they can really take opportunity of this historic moment. Please keep in mind, like, this is the first time there has been a federal investment in digital equity that has happened. And so I'm hoping that our Marylanders can really hold hands with each other and pull up the sleeves and really get to work and take advantage of this opportunity, which is historic. It has never happened before. We don't know what will happen in future, but as long as it is here, I would love to see people rise to the occasion and take that leadership in their counties, in their jurisdiction, in their local communities, So you can also refer to Digital Equity Plan, and that'll also help you give some guidance as to where those gaps are. We are always happy to have a conversation with you in saying, well, what are different ways to get creative or maybe draw those connections? I know University of Maryland has a lot of resources they're happy to share with to help make those connections with organizations and communities. You may not be doing work, but maybe the neighboring county does it. And so would love to see a lot of that action happening through this digital equity capacity funds.
There was one more question in the chat from Betsy. It was about whether it was a multi-year program. And I know are these people required to do it? Can they do it for 4 years? Can they do it for fewer years?
Yeah, so once again, it is a multi-year program. It's a 4-year program. If we would hope that the program is built out for that 4 years. If it's shorter than that, then that's something that we look into, and we won't reject an application just because it's a 2-year program. But we are hoping that we can stretch that program for the complete 4 years. And so that is also going to be part of part of the scoring criteria, is the length of the program itself, and the anticipated length of the program. But no, it doesn't have to be that 4 years, but definitely nothing shorter than 2 years.
All right, I think we're at the hour.
I think we are. Don't forget the survey. It looks like our links are weird on the registration page. We're trying to get that fixed really quick, so we'll make sure we'll send out with the slides and the recordings and all of that stuff. We'll make sure our registration links for the upcoming webinars are updated and posted. So give us a half a sec for that. Thank you very, very much. I'm so amazed at everything that Marylanders have done over the past several years and where we're going. I'm always amazed and thrilled. So it's a lot of hard work from everybody. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mitzi. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Julie.